DeAndre Hopkins is in New England. He's meeting with the Patriots. He will meet with the coaches.
You can't let him out of the building. They can't. And you want to legit be a playoff contender this year? You cannot let DeAndre Hopkins out of your building.
This had to be one of the most humbling experiences of DeAndre Hopkins' career, because in the very beginning, when we found out that he was going to get released, we thought there was going to be a robust market for him, but unfortunately, due to a myriad of reasons, that wasn't the case. Well, it seems like we've reached a conclusion. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, work! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Leading up to the NFL draft, DeAndre Hopkins was considered to be one of the most sought-after commodities on the trade market, especially when we're coming away from a free agency period in 2022, where we saw some crazy contracts being handed out to the likes of, following Christian Kirk's crazy contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Davante Adams got traded from the Packers to the Raiders and signed a huge contract extension that reset the market for wide receivers. This contract was so large that Tyreek Hill, who originally wanted to re-sign with the Kansas City Chiefs, said,
"Okay, you know what? Nah, I want to go to a team that'll pay me as much as max contract QBs were getting paid 4 years ago."
And he ended up getting his wish. Tyreek Hill was traded to the Miami Dolphins and then signed the largest contract that a wide receiver has ever received in NFL history. Now, it's important to note, Davante Adams was 29 years old when this all happened. Tyreek Hill was 28 years old when this all happened. This was all a year ago. So when DeAndre Hopkins had the opportunity to potentially hit the market, or when DeAndre Hopkins was available for a trade, one would presume that the Arizona Cardinals could get a similar haul to what the Chiefs received for Tyreek Hill, which was quite literally 5 draft picks, 1 first-round pick, 1 second-round pick, 2 fourth-round picks, and a 6th-round pick, or what the Packers received for Davante Adams, which was the number 22 pick in the draft and the number 53 pick in that very draft. But there's a huge difference between DeAndre Hopkins and Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill. DeAndre Hopkins' last 2 years weren't necessarily as prolific as his years prior, in the sense that he wasn't able to make it onto the football field quite as consistently. You see, the thing about DeAndre Hopkins is when he was on the football field, he was remarkable. In 9 games this year, he had 717 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. So that's the problem. He only played in 9 games. The year prior, he only played in 10 games, and in those 10 games, he had 572 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. And every year leading up to that, he was his regular self, one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL.
I know I'm the best, so it doesn't really mean anything to me but to keep going out there and working hard.
The past 2 years, he didn't make any All-Pro team. He didn't make it to the Pro Bowl. He sure as hell didn't finish into the top 4 or top 3 of Player of the Year voting, which he had done during his 2017 and 2018 season. So his stock took a bit of a tumble, and teams weren't necessarily willing to meet the asking price of the Arizona Cardinals trade for DeAndre Hopkins. As a result, a couple months after the draft, the Arizona Cardinals decided to release DeAndre Hopkins. They did it in a manner that quite literally screwed him over. You see, for instance, if DeAndre Hopkins was released in March, that's when teams are still trying to build their roster, figure out who they're going to build their offenses around, and as a result, you'll see a ton of player movement. But the thing is, DeAndre Hopkins was released a few weeks ago. Most teams have started OTAs. Mandatory workouts are currently going on. It's not too late, but it's relatively late in the game. And as a result, DeAndre Hopkins' market isn't as robust as it could have been in March. Which brings us to, where will DeAndre Hopkins play? Originally, I thought the Kansas City Chiefs would be a good idea. You go in, team up with Patrick Mahomes for a season, on a prove-it deal, win a Super Bowl at the very least, or have your best chance at winning a Super Bowl at the very minimum, and then hit the market at the age of 32 for one last big contract. The problem is, if he was to go to the Kansas City Chiefs, there's a huge likelihood that Patrick Mahomes would spread the ball around, and he would be more like Julio Jones was on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as opposed to Patrick Mahomes' number 1 target. At least that's what I speculate. But when you look at other teams that were potentially interested in him, the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, have Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. The Buffalo Bills have Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and if they were to add another wide receiver, it would probably be more of a slot wide receiver.
It'd be great. It'd be great to have great players on your team, especially, my boys. DeAndre Hopkins, it just means a little bit more when your guys have opportunity to play for, a team that you're on, man. And it's not like, I'm trying to, we got a great team. And you add Gabe Davis and DeAndre Hopkins on that list, man, that'll put us over the top. So he knows. And he knows we want to be there, and we know he wants to be a Buffalo Bill.
Most teams that would have been in the market for a wide receiver either address their needs in free agency or in the NFL draft. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings and Los Angeles Chargers did just that. There was once a rumor that suggested that Lamar Jackson would want both Odell Beckham Jr. and DeAndre Hopkins on his team. And although that was a cute idea, that didn't seem to materialize either, and it's not the best thing for DeAndre Hopkins either. One, because Lamar Jackson still has yet to have a season where he truly had a dominant and prolific wide receiver that lit up the stat sheet. So I guess you could say from a business standpoint, that could be a little risky. And two, he would have to be splitting targets between Odell Beckham Jr., Mark Andrews himself, and of course the fact that the Baltimore Ravens at least used to love to run the ball. We don't necessarily know the situation under their new offensive coordinator, however, but regardless, that kind of makes them a risk. Which leaves only one team, a team that we originally thought was ruled out. You see, DeAndre Hopkins mentioned in the past that he doesn't want to play on a team with an inexperienced quarterback. But I think what's even more important is going to a team that could quite literally give him the opportunity to be the focal point of an offense, who clearly has a head coach that trusts him and respects him, as you guys saw from this clip from HBO's Hard Knocks.
We only have to play you every 4 years, man.
I love you, man.
You too. You too.
Has familiarity with the offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien, who DeAndre Hopkins said famously back in January that he had no relationship with him at all whatsoever, even though Michael Irvin had once suggested that there was a huge power struggle between Bill O'Brien and D-Hop, and that's what resulted in him getting traded for peanuts on the dollar.
It was a bit of a power struggle there because Bill O'Brien thought he had too much influence over the locker room. DeAndre Hopkins in a meeting to talk about this. He told DeAndre Hopkins, he said, hey, the last time I had to have a meeting like this, it was with Aaron Hernandez. And from there, the meeting just deteriorated. He got into talking about, so DeAndre, he doesn't like that he has his baby mamas around sometimes. And from that, I think the relationship just went bad, and thus we got a trade of DeAndre Hopkins.
And DeAndre Hopkins subtweeting Bill O'Brien back in September after Houston got blown out by the Kansas City Chiefs, saying grateful. But also, bear in mind, this doesn't seem like a guy that had animosity, because when Bill O'Brien got fired in October of 2020, DeAndre Hopkins said, I wish bad on no one. Hopefully he can have success somewhere else. So it doesn't seem like this was a bridge that was completely burned. I think in terms of Bill O'Brien, the situation there was he saw Bill Belichick being a general manager and a head coach at the same time, and he thought he could do the same thing. And to be honest, lately, I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about Bill Belichick, the GM, although I still think he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest head coach in NFL history. I just think the responsibility of constructing a team and coaching the team at the same time might be way too much for any one person to handle. But more recently, Diana Russini reported from ESPN that there is no animosity between Hopkins and O'Brien as the wideout prepares to visit the New England Patriots. And this is fairly significant because it looked like DeAndre Hopkins' most likely destination was the New England Patriots. You might be wondering why. Originally, DeAndre Hopkins said that he didn't want to go to a team with an inexperienced quarterback. I think the top most important thing for D-Hop right now is being the focal point of an offense and proving to everyone that he still could be the number one wide receiver on a competitive team. The thing about the Patriots is they clearly still have an inexperienced quarterback. Mac Jones struggled last year. Yeah, you could blame the fact that they had Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator for his struggles last year, but DeAndre Hopkins needs to choose very carefully, and the decision is much more difficult than you think. Everyone is thinking, why doesn't DeAndre Hopkins just play with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs and chase a ring? Well, if he goes to the Chiefs this late, there's a good chance that he is not going to be the focal point of the offense. So when he does hit free agency once again, he probably won't get the opportunity to secure one large payday one last time. You go to the New England Patriots and that's way too volatile. For all you know, you end up a shell of your former self with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, as they just use you as a decoy on offense, and maybe Mac Jones regresses even though they brought in Bill O'Brien this past year. It's a very difficult decision because on one hand, DeAndre Hopkins wants to compete. At the same time, he can't be a wide receiver 4 or a wide receiver 5 if he wants to ensure his ability to hit the open market once again in free agency and secure a large contract. He was also handicapped considering the fact that by the time he was released, most NFL rosters were already made. So the Cardinals essentially screwed DeAndre Hopkins in this regard, and he didn't necessarily have the greatest choices to choose from. And that's nothing against the team that ended up signing him, because we officially got the answer today, ladies and gentlemen, as according to Doug Kyed at first, confirmed by Diana Rossini and Adam Schefter, 3-time All-Pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins is expected to sign with the Tennessee Titans per sources. This is new Titans GM Rand Carthen's first big splash, at Doug Kyed first to report. Now, I know what you guys might be wondering. What are the specifics? What are the details? Well, Diana would then tell us that the deal is expected to be completed over the next few days. The Titans are giving him a 2-year deal for year 1. It's a base of $12 million with incentives to get to $15 million per source. The deal in its entirety is known to be a 2-year, $26 million deal worth up to $32 million with incentives. And immediately upon this signing being announced, I immediately had to tweet out this picture of all of the Hall of Fame quarterbacks that ended up going to the Tennessee Titans when their career was a shell of its former self. Randy Moss signed with the Tennessee Titans after the Minnesota Vikings let him go in the 2010s. Julio Jones was traded to the Tennessee Titans 2 years ago, and he had an injury-plagued season. Andre Johnson's kind of cheating, I'm going to be honest. This is after his stint with the Indianapolis Colts. No one even knew he was on the Titans during the time he was on the Titans. So let's break this down. A lot of people are saying, why did the Titans have to go and do this? Why didn't they just sign AJ Brown to a contract extension last offseason when his contract expired? And DeAndre Hopkins is quite literally getting paid half the amount that AJ Brown would have been getting paid. To be honest, that was a crapshoot that it seems like the Titans lost at this point, at least this early on. So they're trying to fill the void that AJ Brown has left behind. This is a very slick way to do it. In DeAndre Hopkins' case, he really didn't have a choice here. The Titans are giving him everything he wants. On one hand, they have a chance to compete. Out of all teams in the AFC South, the Tennessee Titans probably have the greatest chance. I mean, them and the Jacksonville Jaguars, in my opinion. They're paying him the amount that he would want to get paid in this particular instance as well. And I think the most significant part about this is the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is clearly going to be the top wide receiver on the Tennessee Titans. He gives Ryan Tannehill a weapon in the passing game and pairs that with a remarkable weapon in the running game in Derrick Henry. So although it's not the flashiest decision, because I know watching D-Hop and Patrick Mahomes team up together would have been incredible football, it was the best decision for D-Hop with the lowest risk that checked off all of his boxes. Ryan Tannehill is an experienced quarterback. He's getting paid a significant amount of money to do this on a short-term contract. He could hit the market in 2 years from now when he's 33 years old, maybe secure one more of these contracts with a Super Bowl contender if he elevates his stock enough, or if he doesn't and his value plummets, then he could join a team in hopes of chasing a ring as like a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. For the Tennessee Titans, I actually give them an A+ for pulling this off. This fills a huge position of need for them. Is it an upgrade over AJ Brown? No, but it's a good pivot considering the fact that trading him to begin with was a mistake. For DeAndre Hopkins, I also give him an A+. This team gives them the best opportunity to win. They have a remarkable defense. They have an experienced quarterback, and he's probably going to be the top option in the passing game. I know the Titans aren't the flashiest team, but they do have a good chance to contend. And it's very low risk for the Titans as well because they're not committed to DeAndre Hopkins over a long period of time. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about this move, man? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.